Recording. Awesome. Okay, so the first thing on our agenda is I'm just going to give you all a general overview of some of the public engagement efforts that Emily referenced. So let me share my screen really quick. Okay. All right, so we are planning to engage the public for input on this digital inclusion plan three major ways. So the first one, like Emily referenced, is conducting stakeholder interviews with organizations and lived experts representing each of the covered populations. So these are going to be sort of one-on-one meetings. A lot of the organizations that we're trying to reach are members of this coalition. So like Emily said, we're going to be reaching out to a lot of you to see if you're open to having an interview with us so that we can try to identify the barriers and the challenges that the populations you serve face. The other part of that is we also really want to make sure that we're including some public input from lived experts. So our connection to these populations are through you all, our coalition partners. So a part of those stakeholder interviews will, with you all, will be to help identify who those lived experts are. So that's sort of the first one, is those stakeholder interviews. That's going to occur over the whole month of March. Secondly, we have a digital equity survey that the state put together. They're distributing it all across Maine, and they are having each regional partner. So we're the regional partner for Cumberland County. They're relying on us to make sure that we get a diverse group of people, communities, businesses, and organizations to fill out this survey. So this survey really gets into the nitty-gritty of what is your internet access? Is it reliable? Is it affordable? Do you have access to digital classes, devices, all of that? And then the last public engagement work that we're going to do is, again, one that Emily mentioned, and it's 4 in-person community events that we're going to hold across the county. And this is really an opportunity to provide space for people to come in and give their public input in person. So recognizing that having an online survey to address digital equity might not reach the people that we're trying to get to. So we want to make sure that there's an opportunity for people to gather in person and give us some feedback. So like Emily said, these will be at libraries, which is a space that a lot of times people rely on when they don't have reliable internet or the digital devices, technical skills that they need. So that is sort of an overview. And first, like it said in the agenda, we're going to talk about the stakeholder interviews. I did see something pop up in the chat, so I just want to make sure y'all connected with the permanent commission staff at all. No, but so Bruce, I'm going to give just like a general overview of what the goal of these stakeholder interviews, sort of what we're going to be asking you. And then we're going to, as a group, look over a spreadsheet that sort of outlines the covered populations and groups. And I would love any input that you have on added organizations, or if you know any lived experts and want to just not share their name, but share that you have that information, and I can put your name in there to follow up with.
Yeah, it might be good to just connect you with staff, because my time is super limited, but you know, I am on the public outreach committee, but Angela Okafor, as well as Hunter and Morgan over there, are really great staff members that have a lot of time, and we're planning on building out public hearings. And so this might be some way that we could do something in unison or incorporate some of those questions. So, and like I said, I just want to make sure, since I have to leave, I wanted to pop in and make sure that was doable.
I forgot, only first 30 minutes. So yeah, we'll save that in the chat. And if we don't get to the spreadsheet before you go, we'll definitely make sure to follow up on that. And Bruce, you made me think of one other thing. So we want to get your input on what organizations we should be reaching out to, and obviously trying to access those lived experts so that we can talk with them. But also, if there are events or sort of meetings that we could plug into that are already happening, like that's a really great way to get a lot of feedback at once. So for example, I've been working with Alan The main military and community network has a monthly meeting. And so I'm hoping to join one of those and sort of ask a bunch of questions about barriers to digital equity. So that's another thing that we would love your feedback on. Okay, any other questions before I talk a little bit more about the stakeholder interviews? Okay. Oh, Bruce, that's great. Okay. All right, so the goal with these stakeholder interviews is to really identify the barriers that the covered population members face in getting online. So it's identifying the barriers, but also a big part of it is going to be trying to identify any recommendations for how to address these barriers. So I know a lot of organizations have been facing this issue for a really long time and might already have some programming in place or ideas of programming they want to put in place, but the funding just hasn't been there. So this stakeholder interview is going to help those ideas rise to the top so that we can include them in our plan. So like I said before, what we are asking from coalition members is, would you be willing to take part in an interview to share the experiences of the populations you serve? So that's the first part. And like Emily said, we'll be following up sort of after this meeting to start scheduling those one-on-one interviews. And then the second part of it is, do you have recommendations for lived experts who would be interested in being interviewed on this topic? And along with that, would you be able to help us conduct that interview? So I know that some of these folks have a relationship with you, don't have a relationship with us. So we want to make sure that they feel comfortable in this stakeholder interview setting. So if there's a way that we can do that interview together, or work with you to conduct that interview and then we can meet after about it, that would be, I think, the best way to go about it. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a minute. And we are going to look at a spreadsheet that I mentioned earlier that outlines the covered population groups that the state wants us to focus on, as well as some other focus groups that they want us to get some feedback from. So internally, we've filled a lot of this out already with coalition partners, but there are definitely organizations that we've missed. And so I'm going to share the screen right now, give you 5-ish minutes to look it over. And then I think it'd be good to have a brainstorm session and sort of give some ideas of what other organizations we might be missing. Before I do that, again, just going to pause for a second to see if there are any questions. Deborah, yes.
Hi all, this is Deborah. So on your slide that talked about the in-person, the option, well, the several options to connect with people. For the in-person ones, or even for people, like you said, that don't have access to internet currently, or will be part of that transition. For example, the work that I do, we work with people using specialized telephone equipment. Some of it's analog, which will soon stop working as everything progresses into digital. So I might trying to identify these consumers also they're not always easy to identify. But the other part of it, sorry, this was two different things. That's one thing. Mm-hmm. The second part of, which actually is my question, is the in-person interviews and the libraries. Captioning, having captioning available, having a captioning app, but also just allowing for any accessibility concerns that may come in. Yeah. You know, like this person might want to come in and or might show up and want to offer their input, but the communication access may not be there. So yes. Has that been discussed, or is that also something that you're like, hey, I guess that's the end of my question. Is that automatically happening? I know you and I are already talking about captioning and stuff, so I just want to keep putting that in people's minds that there's some different ways of captioning available. That's one aspect of communication access.
Yeah. I saw Emily come off mute.
Yeah, I can jump in a little bit. I'm sorry if my sound is wonky again, but yes, we want to definitely work with you on captioning, Krista. That's really great. We are also working, we have a few members of my team, the engagement team, who are working with us on translation, specifically for the Portland-based event, the Portland-based meeting. and so these are all considerations that, you know, we want to make sure are really fine-tuned by the time we get to those meetings. So thank you. I would love to connect with you directly, one-on-one, to make sure that's dialed. And then as far as who, I think the first part of your question, you were asking who our target audience is, essentially.
Yes.
Or not audience per se, but the people that we want to attend. Really anybody who has either insight into, it's sort of the same target as we want for the stakeholder interviews. Anybody who has insight into digital equity as an issue, who works directly with populations that experience, that have you know, limited access or impaired access for any reason, but also those with lived experience themselves, whether it's currently or in the past. Those are who we really want to speak to at these community meetings. So it really runs the gamut as far as who is welcome to these meetings. You know, of course, seniors, that's a big population, but folks with language barriers, you name it, really. It's anybody who has a stake in the digital equity issue. So we will be getting a little bit more targeted in our outreach at each location to identify the populations that we want to make sure are you know, contacted and invited to this event. But that's where we'll really lean on you all to make sure that we're not missing anybody, and everybody, you know, has a chance to participate in one way or another, whether it's with a stakeholder interview or at one of these 4 community meetings. So I hope that answers that part of your question.
It did. And I think you can tell now, but I wanted to clarify, it's Deborah. I think you said Krista. I just want to make sure you know that, I mean, Deborah. I know you can see me now that it's Deborah, but that
oh,
I'm
sure.
the one that I'm the one that asked the question.
Oh, okay. I had it. I think Krista turned off her camera, so my eyes shifted a little.
No worries.
Deborah.
So,
thank
Deborah.
you so
and
much.
Clara has my email and contact information. So
absolutely. Yeah. So those events, you know, we want to be mindful that everyone has access in, you know, and their needs are met in whatever way that means. So
wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Deborah. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to share my screen to show you the spreadsheet that we've been working on that outlines what all the focus groups are. Again, like I said before, we filled this out a little bit with some organizations. So either if there's new organizations that you think should be added, that's great feedback. But also if there are organizations that you see on there that you're like, yes, that is a great organization to reach out to, I think that feedback is also welcome. So what I'm going to do is I'll share my screen, but I'll also send a link in the chat if people want to just pull it up on their own. I'm going to give us 5 minutes, so maybe until 12:30 to just look over this list, take a beat, see sort of what the different groups are, and then we'll come back together to try to brainstorm and see what's missing. So I'm going to send the link in the chat. Oops, 1 second, sorry, it's not the right link. Okay, there it is. And then I will also share my screen. And I just want to make one quick note before we sort of take that 5 minutes about what a lived expert versus an entity is. So, for example, for this group, older adults, aging individuals, an example of an entity would be Southern Maine Agency on Aging. So that's an organization that works with individuals in this covered population. But a lived expert would be an older adult living in Cumberland County. So that's sort of just that difference. But I think I'll give us till 12:31, 12:32, just to take a minute and look this over. So it's hard, it won't show all of them on the screen, so it might be better to try to click on that link if you can. but I'll start up here and I'll scroll in a couple minutes.
We're not able to edit, right?
Let me resend a link that will allow you to edit.
I got to hop out, unfortunately. But yeah, if you want to add the permanent commission on there, that'd be great.
Yep, I'll add that. And I'll also in my follow-up email send a link to this that you can edit, because I know you may think of things after the fact and want to go in there. So I'll share a link that people can just go in at any time and add things.
All right, take care.
Thank you for joining us, Bruce. Have a good day.
Bye.
It seems like there's some chatter. Do we want to get started in talking through some of these?
Yep.
And I'll be sure to capture it in the notes, Clara, so if you can't get it into the spreadsheet, don't worry.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. Okay, let's see. All right, Amy, did you want to share what you put in the chat?
Well, sure. So I know that for reaching small and medium businesses, that there's a Greater Bridgeton Rotary and a Greater Bridgeton Chamber, and they have very long names that I never remember, but they each cover a lot of the smaller communities around Bridgeton as well. So like Harrison, Naples, Casco, Sebago, and so those organizations are good for reaching like those other communities.
Yep.
And then Bridgeton Hospital has a new outreach coordinator. I can get her name and I can get that into the spreadsheet, but not right now.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, because we didn't have great representation of rural healthcare or more rural within the county. So I think Bridgeton Hospital would be a great partner to interview. Thank you, Amy.
And I'll just add, if you have relationships established with any of these stakeholders, it would be so great to get like an e-intro between Clara and I, just because it's often an easier access point if they know who the email is coming from. So if that's not too much to ask, that would be so great.
Yeah. No, that's all fine. The Rotary, I have a couple of board members who belong to both groups, and the Chamber, I'm on a committee with the executive director, and then the Bridgeton Hospital, like I said, she's new, so I don't have a super established relationship, but I can certainly get a name and an email.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. Okay, I see Deborah put something in the chat. Deborah, do you want to talk at all about these groups?
Yeah, this is Deborah again. The Cumberland Senior Networking Group is a group that I go to that once a month. They get together and they're different professionals in different senior living and different areas of senior living and senior professional access. So I can send you an intro.
Yeah,
I love that. With them. And then Maine Senior Guide holds expos in different parts of different parts of the state, but several of them are right here. There's in Portland and now I'm drawing a blank. I want to say Portland and also York County, but they may have some information that and also have the ability to e-blast information and share some resources. Yep. And then Maine Site or Assistive Technology Consortia is another group that I go to that they have a lot of people from different agencies that we work in technology. So similar to the work that I do, may have access to or may have come across situations where people may or be experiencing some digital equity issues, or for some of us just pending. Just as we transition into digital, all of a sudden it's like, you know, these different issues that are coming up. So I'll be happy to do that.
Awesome. Thank you, Deborah. Those are great. Anyone else see anything they want to?
I see Greater Portland Health on here. A friend of mine works there. I don't know if we want to try to find multiple roads into there, or I don't want to double up on anybody either. So yeah, should I just reach out anyway? She works with people or the homeless populations that are, you know, checking in for healthcare reasons. And I'm assuming that most of them have multiple barriers to digital equity and access to technology or broadband and things of that nature. So I was thinking about reaching out to her tonight. And then we have the 50 programs here at the Opportunity Alliance that I've already started at least an initial conversation with one of the vice presidents here to kind of, and I'll just start, you know, getting the word out to the different programs that could cover a lot of these categories that we have here, a lot of these little buckets.
Yeah.
So I'll just start putting the word out and trying to get multiple interviews set up that way at the Opportunity Alliance and then Greater Portland Health as well. Yeah,
that would be awesome. And we can share. So if any of you see an organization on here and you're like, I would love to do that interview, we're going to be putting together some interview questions and are happy to share those and just ask that you, there's this short recommendations form that the state gave us to fill out sort of after you do that interview to analyze the information you got. So we'll do it that way. But yeah, we'd love to have any of your help sort of holding these interviews if you have the capacity to do that. So, and we have had a connection at Greater Portland Health, but it was the CFO. And I think that Derek, your connection definitely sounds like someone that we would want to interview and is connected to the populations that we're trying to reach. So okay, yeah, that would be great if you could do an introduction.
Definitely.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah,
and as far as sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't think in this case there's concern for duplicating efforts, because often we're looking for folks in various positions within an organization too. They might have access to different populations. So that's really awesome. And yeah, as Clara said, we're going to send anybody who wants to conduct an interview themselves or join us for an interview. We will have, we're actually creating a survey that you can input all of the information that you are hearing, or as much as you can capture into that survey, so we can store it in one place. So we're going to try to make it as easy as possible for you all to conduct them if you're interested and have the capacity.
Can I ask in general question kind of about this? So when you say interview, is it more like a survey? Because for instance, like, would you be interested if we were able to administer them, say, to like our Meals on Wheels clients? who are primarily homebound. And if we're able to do that, potentially, the next time the driver comes, they could pick up the surveys and return them to us. Is that kind of what you mean by that?
Yeah, I think there are sort of two. So the stakeholder interviews, I think, are intended to be a little bit more in depth and one-on-one, but there is a statewide. There is a survey that is going out to really as many constituents as we can possibly reach that might be better fitted for that sort of thing. But Clara, what do you think? Would you suggest sending out the survey or?
Yeah, I think, it would. So we have the survey, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in this meeting too. And that's definitely something that we could print and give out to people. So the state has, I had a conversation with some of the people who are running this program the other day, and I think their intent is, so we'll have sort of 2 interview forms for the stakeholder interviews, one for entities and organizations that serve the populations and one that's for lived experts. And so the state has said that we could sort of use that digital equity survey in those lived expert interviews. So I would say we could print that out, and I think distributing it to those folks and then being able to pick it up would be an incredible addition to get sort of their input. Yeah, but we'll take a look at that survey sort of right after we finish wrapping up talking about stakeholder interviews. And, I'd be curious of all of your thoughts on like if that survey misses anything that like maybe with lived experts, we want to delve a little deeper if we can really get those one-on-one interviews. So we'll take a look at that after this. And I'm curious to hear your feedback on that. But Debbie, that would be a really great thing if we could get it to those folks to fill out.
Thank you.
Yeah. A couple things in the chat. Okay, Jane, so you shared the SNAP Ed educators. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So, excuse me. So we have SNAP educators that span all across the state. And so some people are residing in like hospitals, or like a person like myself, or also in like local government or just other smaller community organizations. So kind of similar to like how Opportunity Alliance said that we fit in a lot of buckets, like I do think every educator would have the potential to like reach a lot of facets. So I'm trying to figure out like where to start, or like what singular bucket do we fit in, or I don't know, just kind of organize like how do we reach the stakeholders to then reach the population that we want.
Yeah, Jane, I think that's really helpful, and that makes me think of the fact that these covered populations, like while they are separate categories, we're going to be talking to folks that fit into multiple of these categories, and like trying to reach, I think those people is important. And I think Opportunity Alliance and, your perspective, Jane, is like how we're going to try to get those lived experts. So don't feel like it needs to be in one category or another. And I think just like Emily said, like the more outreach that we can get, the better. So
it seems like we've got a pretty big network even just at the table right now, which is exciting.
Yeah.
That's like, I don't know, there's like 11 people in here. Yeah, so that's really cool.
Yeah, everyone is super engaged also. So thank you again, everyone. This is really great. So I see that we have a couple more things in the chat, but Rob, I see you raised your hand. Can go to you next.
Yeah, this is interested in, I've got a couple of counties that I'm with career centers. So I was just wondering, is this being mirrored out of York County as well? And I've had a staff member talk about this, and this survey, I think it's the 32 question survey, if I reviewed it correctly. And we have some methods to do this statewide in the Department of Labor. And I don't know if we wanted, maybe it's more of a discussion offline, but we have a couple of newsletters that go out periodically that we could include links to this survey on, but we also have been developing over the last couple of years what we call the community of influencers list. And locally, Portland, we have 329 different agencies ranging in category. We kind of categorize them out in terms of social service, vet service, education, faith-based, business services, municipalities, and those agencies, senior services, immigrant services, housing, work search. You know, there's a wide range of who's on that list. And are we looking to cast really big nets like this, or are we trying to be very pinpointed in terms of identifying an appropriate targeted list? So I'm just trying to get some clarity on that.
Yeah, Rob, that's a great question. I think that gets sort of exactly at, you know, the difference between the stakeholder interviews and this statewide digital equity survey. So yes, other counties are mirroring sort of exactly what we're doing. So I will say, if any of you have services in the other counties and you're interested in being connected to the work that's happening in York County or Oxford County, I'd be happy to connect you with the regional partner in those areas. And I'll also say the digital equity survey, if you have a communication channel that's statewide or that even goes across county lines, like that is honestly even better. So this survey, we really just want to get out to everyone in the state. Our focus is mainly Cumberland County because that's where a lot of us are based, and that's where we have the most connections. But if we're able to pick up some people from the surrounding counties, like that's even better. Whereas I think the stakeholder interviews, we do want to be a little more focused on folks that live and reside in Cumberland County, since that's sort of what will go into the plan and hopefully what we'll get implementation funding to actually move forward with. But the digital equity survey, we want to really cast that as wide a net as possible, because any responses that we get outside of Cumberland County will still be incorporated into the state's plan. So Haley, see you raised your hand.
Hi everyone. I apologize for being late, so I'm going to ask a couple questions. But if I'll go back and watch the recording or to catch up on what I missed. Just a quick question for identifying these stakeholders. Are we identifying them as as like key informants, kind of, with, you know, for representing certain, you know, a couple communities or representing a specific community to talk on behalf of that community, or are we kind of identifying people to also help disseminate the survey also?
Yeah, so I think it's both.
Okay.
Yeah, so both of those things I think will be important, and that's sort of like the two engagement efforts working together. So okay. I think in those stakeholder interviews, we will talk a little bit about the survey and how to disseminate that, but that interview in and of itself will be its own set of data that we'll get. That's a little different than the information that we're asking in the survey, but I think the two will complement each other. So.
And then I have another quick question. Was the survey vetted through some of these groups that we're identifying as, you know, people that we want to work with? Because that might be a help to identify, you know, that might be people who were involved in the survey process, and then potentially the main shared community health needs assessment did a little bit of like a health equity effort in their last go around, where they identified some vulnerable populations or populations of interest, and we might be able to get their contact list or their or who was involved in that. So I can reach out to Tim to see if we can grab that.
Yeah, Haley, that would be great. And I can follow up with you directly on that. And I think as far as the survey, so I believe the state got some input from partners. They sent it out to all the regional partners and we shared it. We had a pretty quick timeline to give feedback, but we tried to share it within our organization to try to get some feedback on whether or not it was accessible. We shared it with some of our coworkers who have worked with these populations for the past few years. And they are offering, and I'll list all the translations when we get to the survey, but they are offering 12 translations. And I am curious to hear if there are any that are missing because we do have funding in the budget to do translations. So if the state doesn't provide all the translations we need, like we can provide those internally.
So, and then I want to also just say you can put my name next to having a connection to the City of Portland Public Health Department. We can make sure that we will identify the appropriate staff who can be involved here. And I'm sure our harm reduction, specifically around substance use disorder, rural healthcare, kind of a doesn't maybe it completely apply, but there are some folks who have catchment areas further out in Cumberland County. And then telehealth. Let's, if we can throw maybe Maine Medical Center down, and I've got a couple folks there in mind. Nobody, their name isn't coming to me, but I think we can get us pretty well connected to somebody there who can give us some indication of how telehealth has been working for Maine Health.
Yeah, that's great, Haley. Thank you. Really quick, Krista, I know you have to hop off at 1, but I just wanted to make sure we capture sort of your notes. So yeah, I see you put in the chat spearheading education sessions. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? I don't know if you have any time, but just wanted to give you, oh, I think she might have left. Okay, well, I'll follow up with Krista after this meeting. Okay, let me see.
I got that note from her too.
The LLC versus nonprofit. Yep. Okay, let me see. There are a few others that I wanted to look at. Okay, so Jerry, you mentioned in the chat sort of a need for representation of rural folks that are sort of isolated. I think that's a really good note, and maybe not something that's explicitly on this spreadsheet. Did you want to talk about that at all, or I can just...
Well, yeah, it's not on the spreadsheets. So how do we represent that? Like a number of these other issues, there are multiple groups of people to have the same. Lost my thought here. There's overlay between various groups of people, and so how do we ferret that out?
Yeah, and I think so. The reason why there are sort of 3 different modes of community engagement is to try to capture not only people that fall into these categories, but people that fall into these categories across Cumberland County. So our goal is really, and that's why we chose the locations that we did for these community meetings that are coming up at the end of the month. So, Bridgeton being one of them will be in Brunswick, one of them will be in Gorham, and one of them will be in Portland. So we tried to distribute them in places where we hopefully will capture more rural populations, those central hubs for internet access in those parts of the county. So that was the goal there. But I think you're right in terms of the, the statewide survey. We really want to make sure we get that out to, folks across Cumberland County. And then also when we're thinking about stakeholder interviews, making sure those are fairly distributed. So if you do speak with, any contacts that you are helping us connect to, just maybe mention that we want to have a more holistic approach to this. And we would really like to speak, of course, to folks in Portland and the metro area, but also across Cumberland County. So that's a really great point, and we want to be super mindful of that.
I have a follow-up to that in terms of are the like the presentation coming up in Bridgeton, is that only in person?
Those are only in person, with the idea being that our primary, the folks that we want to primarily engage in theory will be the most restricted in their internet access. And, you know, we want to bring in a lot of folks who go to the library to begin with to access the internet. So those harder to reach folks that who might not be able to jump on a Zoom call. So those are going to be specifically in person, and the stakeholder interviews and of course the survey will be administered either in person or virtually. Of course the survey will be, well, I think we have written forms for the survey, or you could take it online. And then for the stakeholder interviews, we will be conducting them both in person or virtually, depending on that stakeholder's preference.
I have a secondary take on the like the presentation. Again, I'll go back to Bridgeton. It could be that that if they were on Zoom also, that another collection of people in another town that couldn't get to Bridgeton could still participate on it. So like a town hall could sponsor that. That's a thought. That's all.
Yes, and we've thought of that too. Depending on the capacity of the library, we could theoretically do a hybrid meeting and have a virtual option. But you know, for the folks who can't come in person, that's why we want to have those other means of providing feedback. So virtual and in person. And we are doing outreach to not just the libraries that are hosting us, but to libraries in the surrounding areas to try to drive folks either to that community meeting or to take the survey or to potentially participate in a stakeholder interview. So all of these things are, you know, challenges that we're thinking through and we'll need your help with in terms of getting the word out to all communities, particularly rural communities, so that there is a way for everyone to engage and to provide feedback.
Okay.
Okay, I think I saw Amy's hand first, so I'll pass it to you.
And so I was wondering if you had considered possibly putting the survey into the free newspapers that go across the state. So Turner Publishing has free newspapers that are sent to all of the mailboxes. So people who have transportation barriers would at least have a piece of paper option. The library did that at like 15 years ago for a survey. They put it into the Bridgeton News. And they received something like 600 responses, which is like amazing.
Oh my gosh.
People actually like filled out the surveys and mailed in like these newspaper things, but I don't know if that's something that you want to consider.
Wow,
because
that's so cool.
Yeah, and that is something that you might want to consider. And I didn't know if you get them or not, because if you live not in a rural area, you don't know that these things like come to the mailboxes. So just something to think about, and I can send the information to you.
So we are working on a huge press release about the entire initiative, and it outlines ways to engage. And I actually wanted to follow up with you and the other library directors to make sure we're not duplicating efforts. GBCOG can really use its resources to get into as many newspapers as possible. But I'll make sure that Turner Publishing is on that list. This goes over to our communications team. And I'll make sure Bridgeton News is on that list. And, I want to reach out to the other directors to make sure other local papers are also feature this press release. But the idea of having the actual survey in the paper is like really creative. And
well, it's very old school.
It's very old school, but I feel like it's something that I would even do. I think that's a really unique way to administer. So we could talk about that, Clara, with Tom, our communications director, and he used to work at the Portland Press Herald, so he has some insight as to how those things might work.
Yeah, and then the other thing, I just wanted to say that we do have the capacity to have a hybrid meeting. And so just to confirm that if that's something that develops, we can support that. So.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's great to know, Amy. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Deborah.
Hi, everyone. This is Deborah. I'm used to meetings where like, this is Deborah. Along the lines of the hybrid meeting, if you guys did a hybrid, I can't do it without my hands. If you guys did a hybrid meeting in a library, you have in-person, you have Zoom going on, you can utilize relay conference captioning. So the captioning that we're using right now, for those of you that have show captions, so like, let's say I got sick and I can't come to the library, or it's easier for me to participate with the captions, I can use it. I can sit in the library and I can open up my phone or my tablet and read the captions of the meeting and better participate. So the hybrid aspect adds that extra ability to use the captions. I just want to throw that out there. And I know we're talking about Cumberland, but any of them, can utilize the captioning, and Clara knows how to set it up.
I do. I have been trained.
So again, that doesn't cost anything, and that is just, yeah. So I liked Jerry's idea, and I was like, hybrid, yes. That and then also the second thing to address is, I know we haven't gotten to the number of languages yet, but we also will have consumers that are deaf that their first language is American Sign Language. So written word is not part of their first language. So there might be some other considerations that need to be, I want to say, discussed or brought to the table as well. Because I want to share the survey with some of the different groups, but some of them, the survey is not going to be in a language that they're comfortable with, or the communication on an interview. I know you said some of them, our organizations can help with that interview, but even just providing the survey. So there's some extra elements involved in that I can happy to help discuss about. My words are getting confused. It's Friday Eve, so. But I wanted to throw those two things out there: the good news about the captions and also American Sign Language.
Yeah, Deborah, that's great. And I think Emily and I can both meet with you, because I think you have some have like a good insight into that to try to figure out how to make it the most accessible so that we can reach those people too. So I'll follow up with you.
The other consideration is the community meetings are going to be formatted in like focus group styles, and we might do breakout groups. So that's when it gets a little bit tricky in terms of hosting a hybrid meeting. So we're just going to have to work with the individual director to understand what the capacities are and how we might be able to offer that. But that's a really good thing to know that, there's already, closed captioning is integrated already into Zoom. So that's a really good consideration.
Yeah.
I'm going to put my hand back up, Ara.
Yep.
Just to clarify, Emily, so like right now we're using a live captioner, And so this is relay conference captioning. There is also Zoom embedded captions, which is computer generated. So like if the three of us meet Tuesday to chat, we could use those captions. If you're talking about more than 2 or 3 people, you're going to definitely want the live captioner in there. I just wanted to clarify for anybody who's not familiar. I speak captions for a living. I can't help it.
Oh no, this is great. So, and we're also thinking of the same things when it comes to translation too. These are good considerations, and also creates challenges when it comes to setting up a hybrid meeting. So we're just going to have to think that through really carefully. What we don't want to have happen is like have a hybrid meeting and then have it be so muddled and confusing that there's like not actually any effective communication going on. So it depends on our capacity, I think, as a staff, and also what the library has to for. But either way, we want to bring you into the conversation about closed captioning so that we have them.
Absolutely. And just kind of a side note, Clara, I haven't gotten it all. I'm not fully clear yet. This is the coalition, the digital coalition for Cumberland. Disability Rights Maine is also involved with the Maine MCA Equity. I don't know what that group is, but we are talking to them about doing a listening session. All I've gotten is the email that says that's happening. I haven't read through the whole email, but I don't know if there's going to be some overlap as well. That maybe when I get a chance to read through the emails and stuff, some of the things that you're asking might even already be happening on a larger scale through our organization. So just, I apologize. I haven't, somebody said they read the 32-page survey or 32 question. I haven't gotten that far yet. I just know those emails exist in my inbox at the moment.
Yep. Yeah. And there's definitely multiple efforts happening at once, and there will be opportunities for crossover. And sort of as those come up, we'll just sort of address them as they go. So, but there is that statewide digital equity task force that I know that you are also a part of. And that's more focused on that statewide plan. Whereas we're a little more focused on specifically Cumberland County, but there might be crossover in which the Digital Equity Task Force is talking to folks in Cumberland County, and that's information that we would want too. So I think it's good to capture those overlaps.
Or even the opportunity, I don't know how it all works, but like we're our state listening session for Disability Rights Maine, maybe having some of the Cumberland aspect there as well for that same meeting, just to capture that information.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, that's a great idea. We can follow up and talk about that. Okay, in the interest of time, I think I'm going to move on and talk a little bit about the digital equity survey, but I will be sending a link to an editable version of this so that folks can go in and add organizations that they think of or just any other ideas. Only thing that I would ask is just that you sort of record your name in parentheses next to whatever organization you recommend, just so I can follow up with people directly. All right. Okay, so next we're going to talk, we've sort of talked about this already a little bit, but we're going to talk about the digital equity survey. So I'm going to share my screen again. Sorry, it's taking a second. Try this again. Well, while this is loading, I'll just sort of give an overview of what this portion of the agenda, what we're hoping to achieve. So the goal of the digital equity survey, like we've talked about before, is to just cast that really wide net and get as many people, communities, businesses across Maine to fill this out. Oh, page became unresponsive. Let me try to refresh this again. And so where the coalition will come in is helping us sort of identify communication channels in which we can share this digital equity survey, locations across the county in which we should print out copies and put them there and then collect them after. And then also help us sort of, one thing I want to do right now is brainstorm how to get that survey out. So Amy, you already came up with an idea that we can use, putting it in the newspapers. But I'm also curious to hear from your perspective and the populations you serve, what barriers you think people will face to accessing this survey. So I'm going to send a link to the survey in the chat. So this is a link to the PDF version of the survey. And I'm going to give us all a couple minutes to just look through it. Just so you have it for reference and have a little discussion about, you know, where we should be sharing this survey, what communication channels we should use, what locations in the region we should have printed out copies of this survey. And then again, like I said before, what barriers you think people will face in accessing the survey and sort of how we can anticipate that and make sure that those people are still able to view it and respond. I'm also going to share in the chat the list of languages that the survey will be translated into.
So just to be clear, this is the statewide survey, right, Clara? That's
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is the statewide survey. So I actually hadn't looked into it, but I think somebody mentioned like 32 questions. This would probably not fit in a newspaper if I had to guess, unfortunately. But I think, you know, distributing it, as you were saying, Debbie, you know, on Meals on Wheels routes, at libraries themselves, anywhere you can think of where there's, you know, high numbers of touch points. You know, that's what we're really going to, we're only going to capture so many people within the community focus groups and the stakeholder interviews, but this is really meant to capture feedback from folks in an asynchronous way. So that, you know, wherever they might come across it, they'll be able to provide feedback. And there is an online version as well that we'll work to distribute digitally.
Sorry, I wonder if the option for like a QR code in the paper, it might kind of, it's like kind of a solution, but also you would need a phone to access that. But like, I wonder if there's a shortened, like, is there an abbreviated version of this that could exist, not to create too much like additional work. We try to do a lot of surveys like for our classes, and usually the biggest barrier, youth address language, but it's also just like time. And if there's an incentive for completing this, like I'm also thinking about that youth survey that just went out. I think it got, I'm assuming it got a lot of response, or at least just like in my own circle of people, there was a lot of incentive to complete it because there was like a $10 gift card or something. But not to say that we have to like emulate that exactly, but like, is there an incentive for completing this and giving your time? Those are just the first things that come to mind.
I would like to follow that up with a question about, does this information ever get back to the citizens so they can see the result of their contributions?
Yes, so I believe the state will be putting together sort of a report when the survey wraps up, and they'll also be able to filter out Cumberland County results. So we'll get our own data, which will be really useful, and that's information that we want to make sure to include in our plan. Yeah,
because I think it's important when we ask people to do something for them to realize the benefit of their work. And then you can ask them again to do something, and there's a better likelihood they'll see their contribution means to something.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Jerry. Rob, see you raised your hand.
Just wondering if maybe there's or I'm not sure if there's a limitation to gathering information, but to put it up on a platform like 211, where there might be a linking phone number, and maybe someone can fill it out on their behalf, or is that a verification validation issue, or you're just trying to figure that piece out?
Yeah, so the state has encouraged us, like, we can have partners call individuals and ask the questions on the phone and then fill it out on their behalf. So that is fully allowed, and actually I think will be necessary to reach everyone. So I think that would be great if you could incorporate it into that. Yeah. Haley, I think you were next.
I was just gonna go right where Rob was heading. And we did a little community survey about 2 summers ago where we had the option of calling, and whoever was on the other end would just walk through the survey, and it wasn't quite utilized, but for the 3 people who did utilize it, you know, we were we were able to get their voice heard and part of the survey, and that highlighted to us, okay, we've got to do some more work late, you know, the next iteration to really kind of get into these specific communities around that. But having the phone number and a dedicated vote, you know, somebody on the other end, and I mean, I would be willing here at Portland Public Health to be one of those phone people and walk through things with folks, because I think it's so valuable. But that could be, and then you could put the phone number in the newspaper or put the phone number somewhere else. And as long as somebody's on the other end to fill out that survey, and potentially a good solution for people who don't speak English. You know, they can take the survey in their language if it's offered, but if they call, I can also get the language line and then, you know, work with them through the language line, which I think is really helpful.
And as we're talking about phone numbers, it just kind of jumps into my mind too. I think the best of 207 list just came out, and that's a huge way that it's all surveyed information, and maybe they have the magic sauce in terms of, like, I think it's the Portland Radio Group, and then maybe a sit down with some of the key members who spearheaded that, be like, you know, what the tools you used, how do you get that information out there, how do you get it back? Might be good.
I heard this morning 30,000 votes. Yeah. So I don't know what that equates to individual wise. If it was 30,000 individuals, but still, I mean, wow, that's pretty incredible. So that would be great.
Yeah.
So when you say votes, what is that?
Like the survey's pushed out there and people vote on what they think their favorite services, favorite restaurants, favorite papers, favorites, radio hosts, TV hosts, news, you know, all of that. And so they got it out there somehow. They got it back.
We could replicate that in this. Yeah, I see exactly what you're saying. It's kind of like we could be pollsters and
yeah, that's a really good point. And Haley, I really appreciate Haley and Rob bringing up, you know, the idea of having those phone calls. I think is going to be really important. So we'll definitely follow up with both of you on that, and anyone else who is interested in conducting some of those. over the phone surveys. You know, we'll be reaching out to all of you one-on-one to conduct these stakeholder interviews, and a part of that will be talking about the survey. So we can sort of discuss that then. But yeah, I think those are great points. I'm going to pass it over to Deborah.
And this is Deborah. I'm trying to be the well-behaved one in the class and raise my hand. So I'm trying to remember what it was I was raising my hand for now. Oh, I know, printing. So it's like 10-page survey. I do a lot of outreach throughout the state, but a lot of things in Cumberland. I'm going to something next week in Cumberland County. Do we just print this on our own? Is there an opportunity to get printed copies from somewhere? I have a home office, so I'd like to not print them at home.
Yes, so we have printing ability here, and we can either, whatever is easiest for you, if it is us emailing it to you and you printing it, or we can print it here and sort of bring a big stack of copies to any of the partners on this call, just so that you have them, and then can distribute them, you know, wherever you think you'll get the most sort of engagement. So,
and where are you guys?
We are in Portland.
We can come to you.
We can definitely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We'll bring it to you.
Pretty when we actually I think our primary focus right now is well, I'll talk about timing with Clara after this, but I want to be pretty boots on the ground and make sure I actually get to all of these locations. And we will be, you know, across the county anyway for some of these community meetings. So where are you located, Deborah?
I'm down in Buxton, but our office is in Falmouth.
Okay, yeah, that's totally easy. Yeah.
So either one of those.
Definitely. We'll plan on printing out a bunch for all of our partners and getting them to you all, unless you have your own printing abilities. That we'll let you do that. But we are happy to print as many as needed and drop them off at your offices.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Is there potential to make a version like in SurveyMonkey, you know, for maybe those of us who would call, you know, to save paper? I could call them and fill in their info through SurveyMonkey just to kind of save some paper, potentially.
Yeah, so there actually is, I'm going to also send this link in the chat, but there actually is an online. So I was sharing with you the PDF version, just so you could look at all of it at once, but there's also a sort of, I don't know exactly what platform they used, but it's like an online, it's like SurveyMonkey, like you can go in and fill it in on a computer, and you can definitely do it that way if that's easier.
And that actually, seeing that it's ArcGIS, that has a location tag to it. So that's pretty cool. That, I mean, that might get a little difficult when if we're going to fill out the survey for people who maybe are living in different locations. Like if I take the survey here in Portland, but somebody from Bridgeton calls, it'll tag me as Portland, not Bridgeton. So that might be something that it might also be something that maybe we add to the survey. Are you filling this survey out on behalf of somebody or for somebody? And potentially that could help that, but
yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, we don't own the survey, unfortunately. So we would have to contact our state partners to see if that's a possibility, but that's a really great point. With ArcGIS surveys. Thanks for flagging that, because that could skew the data quite a bit. So
yeah, that's a good thing to keep in mind.
I'm going to misbehave and jump in here. Jerry, that it seems like a simple concept, but printing the survey double-sided not only saves paper, but it also shrinks the appearance of the survey. And if you had one that was single page and double the size, a lot of people would make a quick judgment. I don't have the time. So it's really good to make sure it's double.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jerry. Yeah. Go to Deborah.
No, you don't have to. I just forgot to put my hand down.
Oh, sorry about that.
Hi, I'm here.
That happens. Okay, so we are running a little short on time, so I think we'll end this discussion for now. But again, any other ideas that you come up with, please let us know. Like Emily said, we're going to work to get you all paper copies of the survey. So when we follow up about the stakeholder interviews, we'll also include a question about which translations you need, so that we make sure that we get you copies of the survey that have those translations. So the last thing that I just want to share with you before we wrap up is the dates and locations of the community events that we're planning. So this is an opportunity for people to come in person, give some feedback. Oops. Yeah, so we want to make sure that we are spanning the full geography of the county. So we have one in Brunswick, Gorham, Bridgeton, and Portland. And like Emily said, we're focusing these events at the public libraries, since this is a location that people tend to go to when they lack internet access or digital devices. So these are sort of the events that we're having. It's all occurring mostly in the last week of March. And what we are asking from our coalition partners is helping us promote these events. So ones that maybe are near you and you have, populations that you serve that might want to show up to the Bridgeton workshop, any communication channels you can use to promote these events would be great. And then also, of course, we would love for you to attend an event that's near you. I think having coalition partners there would be a really great way to show the other aspect of work that's been going on. So I think I see one thing in the chat. Yes, Deborah. So the survey is ready to be shared now. So the link that I sent you of the online version that you can fill out, feel free to send that to everyone. And I included, as Deborah mentioned, in the email, I included a document that you are free to use as an outreach email. So if you're looking for something if you're putting this in a newsletter or sending it out to an email list, feel free to use exactly that language or adapt it depending on the audience. But we just wanted to give you something so that you didn't have to come up with an email to send, and so that you could just plug it right in and start sending it out. So that sort of wraps up our discussion about public engagement. Are there any final thoughts? We're just going to do one more thing before we wrap up about scheduling for the next meeting, but we have a couple minutes. So if anyone has any final comments about sort of the public engagement in March.
Just from the marketing, and we don't need to talk about this, but how is it going to be marketed? Do we have a set timeline of we're going to do this on this date and this is what it's going to say, this is how it's going to look? And I'm just curious about that, and we can pick that up offline, but have some thoughts about 211 and how that can maybe help with marketing too, and some ideas on how to get the survey out there. So just figured I'd ask.
Yeah,
that's a good discussion to have with our communications team as well. So again, we're not duplicating efforts, but I think the 211 idea is really awesome. So if you have any inroads there, that would be great. I think our communications team uses more traditional forms of advertising, but any sort of creative idea like 211 or publishing a QR code in the newspaper, those sorts of things that would increase access and response rates. That's really relevant, and we want to be mindful of that. But you will receive, any promotional materials that we create. We'll be sending them out to partners so that they can distribute through their own networks.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Derek. Okay, so with the last 4 minutes, I'm just going to launch a quick Zoom poll. So I'm hoping to set up a regular meeting time, meeting every other week through March and April. So I put together a quick poll, just asking about your availability during the week. So I'm going to launch this right now. Does everyone see it? Okay. And I'll circulate this with other partners who aren't there. Oh, Jerry, you don't.
Yeah.
Here, I can, Jerry, I'll send it in the chat and then you can sort of respond.
I can also just, I can read these aloud and answer for you, Jerry, since my response is not really relevant. I mean, it is, but not really. So basically we're asking what times of day are best for you. Monday morning, as in 9 to 12, Monday afternoon, as in 12 p.m. to 5 p.m., Tuesday morning, same time frame, Tuesday afternoon, same time frame. And then we have Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, or Friday morning, Friday afternoon. So just generally, what are the best time frames for you? And based on those results, we will choose a standing meeting time. So is there something for you, Jerry, that would work best off
Thursday,
the top of your head?
Thursday afternoon. Afternoon, I'm assuming means like similar time as we did today.
Right, yeah, sometime between 12 and 5 is what we're aiming for. And is that the only time frame that you'd like to indicate?
At this time, yes.
Okay.
But I can make others.
Okay, yeah, we're just trying to get a sense of the most popular time. We're not going to be able to find a time that works for everyone every single week, unfortunately, but we'll do our best to get as many folks as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Deborah?
Hey, Clara. This is like everybody, this is my life. So like looking at a Monday at 9 to 12, but not this one, but then that one, it would be easier for me if I got this on an email. And so that way I can, that I can kind of play with it and be able to, okay, this is the most likely ones that I'm available. Just trying to do it this way. I can't do that. That's my work schedule at the moment, but I'd be happy to respond quickly on an email to that.
Awesome. Okay. So I'll include this poll in the follow-up email so that you all get it again, and the partners that weren't able to make it today. Because I think other people might want a little more time to look at their schedules. So that makes sense. All right, I'm gonna end the poll. And this puts us right at 1:30. So thank you everyone for joining us today and for all your really helpful feedback. And Emily and I will be following up in the next few days with some of the resources we talked about and some next steps. So thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
so
everyone.
helpful.
Okay, thanks.
Have a good
Thanks,
one.
Captioner.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Captioner.